Full disclosure, news and commentary number 14. 14. 14. Everything's weird because it's on this webcam, so it does everything backwards. At least when I'm looking, but then it flips it appropriately. Whatever. Yo, people have been commenting that my shirts are the bomb diggity. Well, hate to break it to you, but today's might be the best of them all. Look at that. Look at that. And I'm in Florida as people continue to love to point out I'm in Florida. Like that's a negative. So I suppose if I was in Valdosta, Georgia, everything I said would be worth so much more. That makes fucking sense, doesn't it? Oh, So, did anything happen this last weekend, guys? Oh, sorry, man. This thirst had a real stranglehold on me. Oh, shit. From what I've heard, the latest is that Eric Nelson is threatening to sue, but I haven't heard anything directly from him. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see if anything's going to come about with that. Interesting tidbit. Something that you may not know. And of course it has nothing to do with anything going on. Remember that stunt that Paul Heyman did where he had the NWA World title thrown to the ground and had Shane Douglas cut that promo. Little known fact, did you know that there were actually repercussions because of that? Yes. Rumor has it that Paul Heyman, who had been sued many, many times by many, many people, this is just a rumor, but managed to stay out of legal trouble for the most part with ECW, which was no easy task. I can only imagine with PCW it wasn't an easy task. With ECW it must have been an even crazier task. But Paul Heyman's daddy was a lawyer, so kept them out of a lot of trouble. But because he denigrated the NWA title, the NWA actually had grounds with which to sue him. So rumor has it that Paul Heyman, on advice of his counsel, paid a little bit of a settlement to avoid legal trouble. Just putting that shit out there. Hi, everybody. How are you? I'm Stephen Platinum. We got a lot to talk about. And the commentary tonight. I know you're saying with all this stranglehold stuff, it's awesome. I love it. The feedback I've gotten has been amazing. But I don't want to overplay that hand, right? That story's more or less been told. It's been sort of revealed what a piece of crap he is. Eric Nelson, and I'll give him credit for this, has not sort of tucked tail and run. We're in the Trump era, so whenever you fuck up, the answer is you just keep going on the offensive, and you have enough people around you that are like, yay, no matter what you do. And that's where Eric Nelson is. And it's whatever. I might mention a news item or two, a bunch of tidbits, but I'll tell you what it did do. I always had little birds around that sort of told me what was going on. And if the stranglehold thing didn't teach you that my little birds are everywhere and they tell me what's going on because I hook them up as well with information, nothing will ever show you that. But Eric Nelson, you did me a great favor because I thought I had little birds before, but now they're everywhere. They're in the Carolinas. They're in Tennessee. They're throughout Florida. The channel is growing. Of course, I have you to thank for that, people who are watching and enjoying. The commentary, though, has nothing to do with stranglehold and is something that is much more serious and much more severe and an even bigger story than the stranglehold one. Is that a tease or is that a tease? But I am not joking. It is not hyperbole, and it's about something incredibly serious and something incredibly damning and something, people have pointed out correctly that my goal seems to be to clean up pro wrestling as much as possible. You're damn right that's the goal. And tonight we take a giant step in that regard, bigger than any step that we've taken thus far. And what does it have to do with? That's not much of a teaser, right? It's a big build, but it's not a tease. So I'll give you a tease. How about A grown man in wrestling who had sex with an underage girl escaped the full wrath of trouble for it, but now has found his way back into wrestling. Perhaps unbeknownst to many people, or perhaps they do know and they're just turning a blind eye to it. We're about to blow the lid off of that shit at the end. But there's other things to go to, other things to talk about. Let's talk about some wrestling shows. Usually I start with the shows that happened and the crowds that they had. I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna talk about shows that are going to happen this weekend. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about a bunch of these shows because they don't get their stuff into Georgia wrestling history. Get your shit into Georgia wrestling history, dumb shits. Do it. But I'm pointing this out because a couple people criticized me. And you're always welcome to criticize me. Lots of people are welcome to be wrong. Just kidding. Not really. But they criticized me because they said, you say that guys like AC Mack. By the way, AC Mack contacted me and he's like, point taken. I shouldn't have done the Stranglehold show. It was a shit show. Great. That's all I want, guys. And I'm trying to help you. But some people pointed out, like, you say that there's all these shows to do in Georgia, but there aren't really, not as many as you think. Dickheads. These are the shows coming up this weekend by the date. Friday, AWE at the Expo. All-Star Wrestling, APW, Southern Honor. That's on Friday alone. You want the Saturday shows? Are you ready for this shit? Here are the Saturday shows. Ready? Pro Wrestling Bushido, Lariato, Renegade Championship, WrestleMerica, Anarchy, SWA, Georgia Pro Championship Wrestling, NGWA, Georgia Wrestling Extreme, All Pro Championship Wrestling, and Livewire. Did you catch all that? Now, am I saying all those shows are great? Not necessarily. Are almost all of them guaranteed to be run better than fucking Stranglehold was run? Yes. There's shows out there. Go find them. And not only should you find the shows that are worthy of you, you should contribute to the shows at large. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about the shows that happened because they're pretty amazing. I'm going to start off with AWE. So AWE has returned to being Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. And they had their show. Larry did not get his report up yet. I'm not sure if he went to the show. I suspect that he did, however. But he didn't get his report up yet. There were 80 people there. 60 paid. I think that's what I was told. Is that a good thing? Yeah, it's a great thing. And Chip won their main event. That's who should have won their main event. Hopefully, this is a fresh start for AWE. I'm going to say this. A lot of people think I have an axe to grind with AWE. I have an axe to grind with promotions that are not getting stronger and showing signs of learning. I think AWE is viewing this as a fresh start, and with Chip as their champion, it did something very interesting. I was going to have a top 10 list. But now with Chip winning that title and being used prominently soon in the Peach State show as sort of a dream match against Sal, I had to adjust my top 10. Hint, hint, Chip Day is now in it, in a prominent position. So I'm going to have to release that possibly tomorrow. I did want to be as current with that top 10 list as possible, so I wanted to wait for this weekend shows to happen. And AWE, whew, good for them, pulled off a good show. Now, is this the first step in a journey? Are they continuing to grow their crowd show after show after show and building on the momentum? We're going to have to see, but it wasn't 20 people, folks. It was a lot of their, no doubt, if they're getting a number like 80 people in the building, that means that a lot of their hardcores have come back. That means people are willing to give them a chance. That means their Atlanta audience is returning. And I think if they continue to do shows, once they hit the triple digits again, once they reach that 100 number, then they're really in the game, and so on and so forth. I certainly wish them luck. And Chip Day, congratulations on winning that and being back into the hunt. Certainly easy to justify putting him in the top 10. Other shows. I'm going to do Peach State did a show on July 6th. Drew in the 110 to 115 range. Lots of stories being told there. Peach State is another group that I think is primed for a big breakout thing. They're setting the stage for this combination of better in-ring wrestling that they want to do, but telling stories that matter to that fan base. An interesting thing that noted was Rob Adonis was on the card, and here, just seeing Rob Adonis's name reminded me of how much I missed those terrible Jody Hamilton podcasts. Does anybody remember those, or is it just me? But Jody Hamilton used to always talk about Rob Adonis. He never addressed Rob Adonis by name, but he would always bring up Rob Adonis. And the shit usually went something like this. Hey, everybody, this is Assassin Jody Hamilton. There's this guy, and he would be in the locker room, man, and he would just, he would have a trophy, but he bought it himself, man. Just putting himself over. Fucking marks, man. Anyway, this has been the Assassin Jody Hamilton. Goodbye. And then he'd hang up the phone and would make this weird loud noise because he probably still had a phone in the kitchen, Napoleon Dynamite style, with a long cord, and he would just stretch it over to his recliner chair, do the podcast, just speak long enough to get paid. And then he'd put the phone back up. Interestingly enough, that used to be a collection of podcasts. I think all three of the guys got paid something. Jody Hamilton's was a complete waste of time, but I couldn't stop listening to it. Bill Barron's used to do an analysis of Impact's ratings, and then Jim Cornette. So, yeah. Boy, has the podcast thing taken off for everybody, has it not? All right, what else did we have? Wrestling United on July 6th drew 80. Let's talk about Lariato Pro Wrestling Guild, 200 plus. Wow, good for them. And then, but the biggest show that happened on the weekend, besides Stranglehold and their 200 plus crowd, 50 or 60, 30 paid, was the PWX Legends show. The report by Brett Wolverton was lovely. 600 plus is the listed attendance. Obviously knocked it out of the park. I saw where the promoter was already moving on to the next projects, but he was rightfully very excited. The guys on the card were rightfully excited. Jonathan Feltner had a bunch of great things to say. He was part of the commentary team. Logan Creed sent me a video panning the crowd as it came in. So I have nothing negative to say about PWX. It's not negative, but I do have something to say that is interesting. And I'm sure that they would back this up. I'm a little shocked that the number was so low. They did a great job promoting, and you're talking about Jushin Thunder Liger and all the other stars they had there. It seemed to be booked appropriately to get their guys over, that kind of thing. 600. However, you got to keep in mind that they're hardcore regulars who bought those ringside seats. Those tickets were very expensive. So they certainly made their money on that show. It does shock me that they only got 600. I don't know if that says something about wrestling in the Carolinas in general. PWX tends to draw a very good... Put it this way. PWX, they had a show recently that was... The listed attendance was 432. So to only get 600 for a show of this magnitude at the Grady Cole. The Grady Cole holds, I want to say 3,000. Is that right? If I'm wrong, someone please correct me. But to have 600 people, of course, it's a great house, right? 600. I mean, every group but Southern Fried would be happy with 600, right? And why you got to bring up old shit, Steve? But I'm a little shocked that number was so low. Though, again, the dollar per ticket in the gate is still incredibly impressive. But I would love to hear from people, now that I have people in the Carolina area that can kind of school me on this a little bit. Why wasn't that number higher? Because I thought PWX did everything just right. But I don't want to make the story just about the PWX number. That show is an undeniable success. The biggest one of the weekend in the Southeast, probably in the whole country as far as an indie show went. They sent Liger off in style. They made their own guys look good. They have definitely set the table for PWX for months or years to come. Great time. Great event. No doubt. Other shows that happened. APW on June 21st, which was their setup show for Freedom Fight, drew 72. Great for them. And then for Freedom Fight, drew 150. That's more than double. That's what you want to see, right? Setup show and then the big show to be more than double your previous crowd is great. Yeah. A couple of news items. I'll do the serious one and then I'll do the stupid one. And then we're going to get into this commentary, folks. We're going to get deep into the commentary. And it's a big one tonight. So I'm not going to apologize for the length of this video. I'm going to talk until the story is done telling. Billy Oceans, a.k.a. Ryan Wexler, passed away. I only saw him perform once. And, kind of being there with Scotty Beach and all this kind of stuff. I did see him perform once back when I used to go to shows. I used to go to a lot of people's shows to sort of scout talent and just see what other people were doing. And I'll say this motherfucker made me laugh. And that's a hard thing at a wrestling show, to get me to genuinely laugh, not just laugh at how shitty something is. So that guy, hats off to you. And I thought it was really nice that Georgia Wrestling History catches these kind of news items and presents it to us. And the other news item that is not nearly as serious is the C. Nick versus Matt Griffin feud. Oh my God. Man. So what was it? Matt Griffin was critiqued C. Nick, and he took it really badly and overreacted. Not C. Nick. No! C. Nick overstating a case. Never happened. And then Matt Griffin with the biggest fucking diss line of them all, which is basically like he should be on the other side of the barrier. People call this drama, and they say that it looks really bad. Folks, have you been around performance arts of any kind before? This is par for the course. And Matt Griffin, I think there's a part of him that probably feels like this was beneath him, but he felt the need to fight back. He's right on both accounts, honestly. And C. Nick, there's lots of people who like him and lots of people who love him and that kind of thing. So, he says something, people listen. I will say this. Is he on a show that's worth a shit? And has he ever done anything that's worth a shit? I'll just leave that question floating in the air. Now our commentary. I don't need this. I don't need my notes. Full disclosure. Full disclosure wasn't always these kind of weekly video things I do. Full disclosure started as articles that I wrote quite a few years ago. They used to put them all up on Georgia Wrestling History, or GWH newsandnotes.blogspot.com. You could probably track them down. They're called Full Disclosure. I wrote 50 of them. And I was really proud of those columns. Now, they got people mad as these things do right now, right? I used to do a regular feature called Wrestling Autopsy. When a group would go out of business, I would analyze it, autopsy style, why they went out of business. People didn't like that because, of course, people were to blame when a group went out of business, and nobody wanted to be to blame, right? But I did it. But occasionally a story would come up that was big and important. When Brian Blaze got arrested, accusing him of armed robbery, but he was innocent, and I knew he was innocent, but it looked like he was in a bit of dire straits. And me putting that article about Brian Blaze's innocent spurred one Simon Sermon into action, who did some investigation work, and he helped keep Brian Blaze out of jail. Great thing, right? Am I taking full credit for Brian Blaze didn't go to jail because of me? No. However, it was something that I felt strongly about. I had an audience. I put it out there. The right person saw it, and the right person acted on it and helped Brian Blaze out. Great guy. Yeah. One of the other articles I put out, and this one is interesting because it's a bit of a controversy. It wanted to be taken down at the time. A little history. It was Larry Goodman and it was Rich Tate was the guy who were running the site and in charge of the site. Hence Georgia wrestling history, because Rich Tate was very interested in Georgia's history, with Georgia's wrestling history. He was much more fixated on that. In the recent years, Rich Tate has gone away, and I'll be honest, the site is better for it. But one of Rich Tate's last things was he wanted this article taken down that I wrote. What was it about? It was about that guy. Zachary Seabolt enticing a child for indecent purpose. So this mugshot turned up. You know how in Georgia, especially in small towns, you can buy these books or these little magazines that are collections of mugshots. You buy them for like $1 to $3. And somebody happened to see this one and they sent it to me. So I did some digging and I did some research. I've always had connections, folks. Now I just have more. So good old Zachary Seabolt, aka Zachary Blaine, was a wrestler of some note at OSWA. OSWA, full disclosure, was a group that I despised, right? Owned by a guy named Bobby Popham. And Bobby Popham, over the years, has done a great job rehabilitating his image with the people in the area, especially with Anarchy. Anarchy initially hated OSWA, despised them, as they should have. They were running shows in the same town. They would do things like on the 5th Saturday when Anarchy would often have their biggest shows of the year, they would run counter to them, charge only $1. They were like supposed to be the ultimate family-friendly promotion more than any other. I wrote more than one column about them, about how I thought them using like 13, 14, 15-year-olds in wrestling matches, even if they were done up like silly little things, was a bad idea. That if anybody got hurt, for example, that's the kind of thing wrestling commissions would absolutely crush everybody over. I was right. But I caught a lot of shit for it. I caught a lot of shit because I used to say a lot of stuff against OSWA. And they didn't like me very much. They would start shit with me and then block me and all this kind of crap. And it went back and forth. But I was still of the mind that OSWA, especially because they were run out of Bobby Popham's martial art gym that catered towards small kids, and they were always like, we want to give the kids a safe place, and we want to give the kids this, that, and the other. Now, I had heard stuff about OSWA at the time, which ended up being true, which was they didn't run a very tight locker room, meaning they had a bunch of very young guys wrestling for them, guys who were under 18. Now, certainly have there ever been guys who were under 18 who trained in pro wrestling? Yes. But they took it very seriously, and OSWA seemed to be like a jokey joke thing to me. And I had heard that their locker room was kind of loose, and like people would go in and out of the locker room like young girls and stuff like that. And it just seemed like it seemed like they were setting themselves up for danger, and danger happened. Right? So, as I recently found out, the story had always been that Zachary Blaine here, who was married and just had a kid, was canoodling, there's a word, canoodling with somebody who was like 15 or 16. And then all this shit came out. Bobby Popham was one of the people who discovered the messages. And they basically had to kick Zachary Blaine out. But they kept it kind of hush-hush, that the girl was was the daughter of somebody who was sort of helping OSWA out. That father contacted me, basically asking for mercy don't put it out there. That's my dog. Like the pastor was more worried about a stain getting on OSWA than the fact that his own kid was part of this thing with Zachary Blaine, who was a grown man. It was a disturbing story. And I caught a lot of shit for it, right? Some people took the premise that I shouldn't have said anything because Zachary Blaine wasn't convicted and innocent until proven guilty, even though everybody basically admitted that it happened, including the OSWA people who were the ones that found out about this whole thing, that this girl who they let in their locker room repeatedly ended up having a thing with this guy. And he was arrested for it. Fast forward a little bit. So what happened with all of that? Well, if you are pleading guilty to enticing a child for indecent purpose, that lands you on a sex offenders list, does it not? Unless, perhaps, your mom is the warden of a prison and uses her stroke so you don't have to register as a sex offender everywhere you go. But that doesn't take away what you did. So fast forward to now. A few videos ago, you're going to have to find it yourself. I don't remember exactly which one it was. I dropped Zachary Blaine, aka Zachary Seabolt's name. Why did I drop his name? Because I noticed he was one of the first people who added this channel as a subscriber. And I thought it was noteworthy. I was like, oh, Zachary Blaine. There's a name I recognize, right? So I sort of casually dropped it. And that inspired somebody. Perhaps Zachary Blaine was dumb enough to do this. Told people about it, or I don't know what it was, but people contacted me. And I had time to confirm the story. The story was big enough and important enough that I was just going to run with just what the one person told me because everything seemed to match up. But then I had time to actually confirm the information. And here it is. So the reason I dropped Zachary Blaine's name is not because he subscribed to the channel. That I was just reminded of that because he had turned up on a Southern Violence show. Chris Nelms and Justin run that one, right? And I was like, why the fuck would anybody use Zachary Blaine? I remember thinking that at the time. Why would you fucking use that guy? He's fucking poison, right? That's one thing. I could maybe excuse that Chris Nelms and Justin did not know about Zachary Blaine, or he sold them a line of bullshit that it was no big deal, or whatever the fuck people like Zachary Blaine say to get out of trouble, that they clearly caused and clearly did a lot of harm. So I started looking back at OSWA. I'm like, well, if he's feeling empowered to be on this show, surely, though, he's not involved with OSWA anymore. That would be insane, right? You fuck around with... Oh, and by the way, I found out that the girl was not 15 or 16. Not that it makes it any better. She was 14 at the time. Does that make a difference? I don't know. It feels like it does it not? Anyway, dug into OSWA a little bit. Found out a couple things, that they've had personnel changes, that some of my old rivals... I mean, OSWA hated me, folks. Like, indirect death threat hated me. Blocked me, hated me, kind of stuff. But that at one point, according to people that I talked to, that Zachary Blaine started hanging around the locker room again. Does that seem like a good idea to anybody? And that was Bobby Popham's explanation. He's just hanging around. He's, you know, I wouldn't let him be part of anything again. I mean, why would he, right? Their entire audience is basically comprised of kids. They run out of a martial arts studio that caters to small kids, and they always go on and on and on about how they're out to protect the kids. So it turns out that Zachary Blaine wasn't just hanging out in the locker room, as Bobby Popham was telling people, to sort of diffuse the situation of, here's a guy who fucked around on our property, like establish that relationship with a girl, a child really, of 14 through OSWA. And here he is by the locker rooms again. This makes no sense. But no, it wasn't just that he was by the locker rooms. He was wrestling for them again. And not only was he wrestling for them again, he's their booker. He's a shot caller. He's there making decisions. He's there in contact with children, with the young people that wrestle for them and work for them. Men and women, boys and girls. Zachary Blaine is back with OSWA. Is this Bobby Popham giving a guy a second chance? Or is it Bobby Popham's arrogance? Bobby Popham not caring. Bobby Popham not looking out for the people that he always says that he looks out for. OSWA has always been big on heroes and villains and heroes and villains and purity and all of this kind of nonsense and this malarkey. Folks, enticing a child for indecent purpose. The fuck? That's the guy who's going to help run your show that you cater towards kids. That's the guy that you're going to let back into the fold and do it on the sly and do it on the sneak tip. That's the guy that you're going to use your connections to get him into other shows. I gotta agree in principle and in a small way with what a lot of people have been saying lately. Like all this drama around Georgia wrestling, I don't like it and da-da-da-da-da. But I hate to break it to you folks. Wrestling, performance, sport, life is filled with drama. And it's interesting and it's enticing and it's salacious. Let's be honest, it's salacious. But sometimes it's necessary so you can dig out the truth, so you can root out the bad. Is there somebody, I mean, because, you know, no matter what I say or no matter what I do or whatever, my goal is to make things better at the end of the day. And no matter what, I mean, I have to listen to people defend Eric Nelson. A guy who didn't promote, ran a total shit show, total fucking disgrace of a show, and I have to put up with people messaging me defending that piece of shit. Okay, it's wrestling to an extent. It's subjective, so I guess you can say, no, that was a great event. Holy fucking shit, fine. But please, somebody, please defend this. Please try to explain to me how Bobby Popham is this great fucking guy and OSWA is this great thing right now. And how wrestling groups that are bringing in Zachary Blaine, because God knows there aren't dozens of other wrestlers who could have that spot, that they shouldn't be ashamed of themselves. How are they going to frame it? Because they're going to have to frame it. Are they going to frame it as like he's a young man who made a mistake and, you know, this is part of his redemption story or whatever the fuck they're going to say? I want to keep your eye on the ball, and I don't apologize for doing it. OSWA has always held up their nose at everybody else. We're better. We're doing things. We're creating the next generation of wrestling fans. You know how many times I had to hear that shit when I first wrote down this thing about Zachary Blaine, that Rich Tate said, well, you're innocent until proven guilty. We don't want to put that up there and blah, 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 blah. It turns out I was right, and it turns out he was guilty, and it turns out all of those things. But I had to hear so much stuff from people. I had to hear so much bullshit about how great, OSWA, we're creating. Imagine this, the father of the girl told me, the next generation of wrestling fans has to come from somewhere. This shit happened to his daughter, and he was so twisted up in their bullshit that instead of thinking about his daughter first, and I've never talked about this before publicly or written about it because it was so disorienting to me, he was more concerned about the OSWA insular cult mentality of we're doing this great noble thing, that he was losing sight of the fact that it was so fucked up. So to allow Zachary Blaine back in on the sly at a show that gears itself, I told somebody recently when we were chatting back and forth that I find the whole concept of family-friendly wrestling to be stupid to begin with, if I'm being honest. It's an activity where the medium of exchange to solving conflict is always violence. It's already not family-friendly. I don't care if you say fuck or not. I don't care if you have blood or not. The whole premise of the thing is not family-friendly. But OSWA is going to wave that flag of we're family friendly and all of that shit. Enticing a child for indecent purpose. And he's in the wrestling business. What are you going to say? All the people who I always see railing against this guy and that guy, all the people who just jump all over Chase and Rance any chance you get. Is this not worse? They let him back into the same locker room, folks. Bobby Popham and the rest of them who are all about the kids let Zachary Blaine back in. And by doing that, and they also put him in charge. Made him the booker. And now he's finding his way into other people's wrestling shows. Do we fucking need this? Should we accept this? Are you okay with this? Is this just more wrestling drama that needs to be swept under the rug that you're beneath? Or is this some bullshit? And if you're one of the people who defends Bobby Popham and tells me what a great guy is if you just got to know him and all this shit, what do you have to say now? At what point do people just admit that something's fucked up, admit that they were wrong about their opinion about somebody, and do something about it, or at least not enable it? Or would you rather appear right in your own mind than actually be right? I guess we're about to find out. This has been Full Disclosure.